Hey guys, this is Ryan, Doyles Automotive. Previously we made a video about this Ford Fusion here that got diagnosed with a bad PCM and some ignition coils that caused that failed PCM. So today what we're doing is we're going to be replacing the ignition coils and the spark plugs, and I figured let me make a video on that. These are, I don't want to say tough, but they're a little different doing the plugs and coils on this vehicle because the intake manifold does go over the back of the back bank and covering the back ignition coil, so it makes it a little tough. So we're going to make a little video on doing this. Let's get started. Just going to get our air intake tube out of the way right off the bat here. Set that to the side. Unplug our mass airflow. Our mass airflow's got a little red clip. You have to slide the clip up, push the tab in, and then remove the connector. We're going to do the same thing on our connector for our throttle body. With the red clip, and then push it in and pull. Move our battery. This will just give us a little bit more room. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to just take the throttle body off the intake manifold. This way we don't have to disconnect all the coolant lines on the manifold. Again, you have two coolant lines on the bottom of this manifold. You could absolutely, on the bottom of the throttle body, you could absolutely take those off and remove the throttle body with the manifold. However, I find it just a little bit easier to not open up the cooling system, save yourself a little time, just move the throttle body out of the way. There's a couple hoses on the back of the manifold here with some spring clamps. Let's pop those off. Get it out of your way. Okay, well, there's an evap line right next to the throttle body neck here with another spring clamp and a metal end. Let's go ahead and pull that off and get that out of your way. Your map sensor back here, you're going to have to disconnect that clip. As well as a little Christmas tree clip back here, Christmas tree clip up here. Next thing we'll want to do is pull the EGR valve off the manifold. Now there is a metal tube on the bottom of the EGR valve that I found is usually either stuck or really tough to get off. It's easier to take the two bolts out of the EGR valve going into the manifold, leave the EGR valve sitting on that tube coming off. It is a shop. I don't think people care if you talk. So again, what we're doing is just removing these two 10mm bolts, holding the EGR valve to the manifold. Now you're going to want to be careful. There is a gasket that's on the EGR valve to the manifold here. Normally it's stuck to the EGR valve. I don't touch it. It's probably not a bad idea to replace that while you're in here. Next thing we're going to do is pull the bolts out going from this upper intake plenum to the lower manifold. These are 8mm bolts. right, so again, that's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bolts holding the upper intake plenum to the lower intake manifold. With that, you can go ahead and lift your upper intake plenum off. Thank you. Have a good night, man. At this point, it's business as usual with your plugs and your coils. Nothing's different here. The only thing I would recommend is go ahead and take some rags and put them in the lower intake manifold holes, just so you don't get any bolts or drop anything accidentally down there. Forget about it, blow up the motor. All right, guys, we're back. So all the coils are in, the new plugs are in, we're all set. It's got a little bit of a valve cover leak into one spark plug hole that we're going to let him know about. It's probably not a bad idea to put a valve cover gasket on this vehicle in the future. But we're going to continue on here. So just make sure your mating surface for your upper intake plenum is clean. Just wiped it all down. And then you're going to want to go ahead and replace those upper intake manifold gaskets you already have done over there. And just put that back on. Okay, you're just going to want to place your new manifold on there. Careful not to knock the gaskets out of place in the bottom of the manifold. Then go ahead and run all your bolts in. Notice we are not tightening it with this 3/8 impact gun here. We're just running these bolts in, and we're going to go ahead and torque them down to their specification. Going to start hooking some lines up here. So start with this evap line that's going right next to the throttle body, and we'll work our way around. There's a spring clamp on there that's clipped back on. Then you got your brake booster hose here. Another spring clamp. It's just the reverse order of how we took it off. Map sensor connector and the Christmas tree clip next to it. Get in there. Christmas tree clip right in front of the manifold there. We're going to bolt our EGR valve back on. You want to make sure that gasket's still in place. So a lot of times I reuse that gasket. I don't have an issue with them. You can replace it. Print out the sequence for me. So that's our two 10mm bolts in the EGR. Snug those up. All right, we got our torque sequence up. Just make sure you guys can see that. You pull it up here a little closer and get it to focus for us. So this is your torque sequence to that upper intake manifold. You are going to want to torque this, and those are your specifications there. So 89 inch-pounds. And there's your sequence. You're going to want to be real careful with these bolts. You don't want to over torque them. I have seen them broken, cracked manifolds because of it, so it's something you're going to want to torque. All right, that's all torqued up. Let me show you guys that one more time, just in case. If you want to screenshot that if you're doing this at home in your driveway, it's your opportunity. It's printed right from Mitchell. It is Ford Motor Company's information. All right, moving right along your throttle body, make sure your gasket is in place. Plug your throttle body back in. Snug these bolts up. All right. So at this point, I'm going to stop the video solely because we still have to replace the ECM in this. So I'm going to put the battery back in, get my programmable parameters out of it, save everything, replace the PCM, and continue with the job from there. So the only thing left for you guys who are just doing your coils or your plugs or repairing your misfires, you're going to have to put your battery back in along with your battery hold down and your intake. Don't forget to plug in your mass airflow sensor. and that's going to be it. Fire it up and you'll be ready to run. I'll probably make a video on the programming of the ECM. I'm not going to make a video on the remove and replace of it because it's just so simple. It's right under the battery tray there, a couple bolts, and the module comes right out. Thanks guys. Give it a like, give it a follow on our page, subscribe. Have a good one.